Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, which is focused on the behind the scenes of DTC texting. This webinar is sponsored by RedChirp, and we have a special guest joining from Bandwidth to share his knowledge and expertise. Now, this webinar is pre-recorded, but both our speakers are with us in the live chat, so I encourage you to draw on their deep well of knowledge when it comes to technology, compliance, as well as strategy for using DTC texting in your marketing. Now with that, let me kick it over to Jennie to get us started.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Win, for having us for this webinar. I am so excited, and I'm super grateful that John Anthony agreed to join me today. John is a senior account manager with Bandwidth, which is one of the nation's largest voice and messaging carriers. And full transparency for everyone out there, John is the person that I reach out to when we need guidance or intervention with anything related to the telephone carriers. So John, tell us a little bit about Bandwidth, about your role there and your area of expertise.
Sure. So as Jennie mentioned, I'm with Bandwidth. I've been at Bandwidth going on 8 years. So a good amount of experience in the industry. Like most folks my age, low 30s, we're obsessed with messaging. That's what we grew up on. So in terms of process, different ideas, use cases, things of that nature, it's kind of what I guide customers with, like Jennie, to kind of adopt and move forward with and add as they continue to grow their businesses. Bandwidth, as Jennie mentioned, is one of the nation's largest, depending on the day, voice over IP carriers, voice messaging 911. And so what we really do is we're kind of, I guess, Jennie, the way I always like to say it is we are kind of like an expansion pack to your business. So you have your core business, your core software. Jennie contacts us and we have some code and they code in together on the two software sides and they have access to our nationwide or international, I should say, network for voice and messaging. So that's what we are. We're just kind of the folks powering things in the background there.
Thank you, John. Mm-hmm. Now, for everyone joining us, if you've been to any of our webinars before, you might notice that we've never done a webinar quite like this one. Usually, we're speaking with a winery and some other wine industry-specific partner, and we are really laser focused on strategies that you might be executing at your desk. But like so many things, not just in work, but in life, right? Our text messaging strategy, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. We rely on this whole giant system that includes many moving and complex parts to get our messages delivered. So I thought it would be really interesting because text messaging is just becoming so critical to take a step back and peel back the curtain and learn more about how that whole system works and some big changes that are coming to it. So here's the plan for today. We're going to start by showing you the path each of your text messages go through between the winery and the consumer that's receiving them, and all the different folks that are involved in between those two things. Then we're going to talk about registration requirements and how those have changed and evolved tremendously over just the last few years. We'll touch on some hot issues right now in business messaging and tips for how to stay on the good side of those. And then the most exciting part, we're going to introduce you to RCS, which is a whole new type of text message that's coming to business messaging in the near future. We're going to talk about what it is, why it is so exciting, how to get ready for it. John, did I capture our plan today?
I think so. That's what we ran over, so I think it's good.
Great. Okay. So first, we're going to get familiar with the terms and the various entities that get involved in the path of our messages. A little bit of alphabet soup, I apologize. And John, you're more of an expert than I am on some of these things, so jump in and correct me if I'm wrong in any of these. But sure. First, we'll talk about a CSP. A CSP is someone like RedChirp. That is a service that end users like yourself are using to engage in business messaging. Then we have these things called MNOs, More commonly, we call them like the major carriers, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile. Now, John, am I right? The key issue here, or the key definition, is that they actually own the physical infrastructure for the telecommunications. Is that right?
Yes, they own the physical infrastructure, which in their case, when we were referring to physical infrastructure, we're talking actual towers, right? Nationwide towers that provide us cell coverage that we use every day.
Right. Now, in between those two, we have connectivity partners like John at Bandwidth, which supply APIs to CSPs. Sorry for all the acronyms, right? APIs let us build our software and use code to send these messages, and connectivity partners like Bandwidth help connect CSPs to MNOs. And then this is like the most fun topic, John, aggregators. John told me this, right? To think of them like last mile delivery. Can you tell us a little bit more about aggregators?
Yeah, certainly. Aggregators, guys, essentially are folks that the carriers have allowed to connect directly to them. So we might send a message to these aggregators who then pass it through to the carrier. Carriers have stood these people up and given them these connections so that they can these companies can monitor and monitor traffic, monitor for keywords, things of that nature, so the carriers can just bring the traffic and deliver it, not have to think about it.
Excellent. And one thing I think is so interesting is these aggregators, there's kind of a purposeful shroud of mystery around them for security purposes. You can't always, or at least a CSP, I guess, can't always speak directly to them or even know exactly who they are.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a forced swivel chair effect, right, from a support perspective. It's not necessarily always the most desirable thing, but it's kind of the industry norm on our side for telecom. So,
okay. So when you send a message to your customers, it's not a direct path from you to them. It's actually quite a journey. So we're going to walk you through what this message flows through. So it starts obviously with you, the winery, sending the message, and then it goes through the CSP, like RedChirp. Then the CSP is going to send it to their connectivity partner, in our case, Bandwidth. And then gets a little fork in the road sometimes. And sometimes Bandwidth can send a message directly to the big carrier, the MNO. And sometimes you have to go through an aggregator. Can you tell us more about that?
That's kind of what I mentioned on the last slide, that word direct connect. So Bandwidth, not to take over and pitch us, but Bandwidth has a direct connect with one or a couple of the carriers working on more of part aggregator, part connectivity partner at this point in time. So that's why there's a little bit of that fork in the road there.
Perfect. And then finally, your message gets to the handset of your consumer that you were sending it to. Now, why even mention this path? I wanted to point out that it is going through all these folks, and most of the time everything goes right and it flows smoothly and get delivered, but things don't go right 100% of the time, and a problem could happen at actually any point along this path, right, John?
Correct. Anywhere there's code can break down, right? Nothing's perfect. We're all fallible, right?
So I also wanted to take this opportunity just to mention, most messages get delivered, right? But it is not perfect 100% of the time. Text messaging is not banking. Right? So there is occasionally, it doesn't happen often, right, John? But there are small occasions where a message doesn't get delivered and we can't even exactly figure out why. Something happens somewhere, it's not perfect all of the time. Is that an accurate characterization?
Sorry, and yes, it is. I apologize for interrupting a switch there. For everyone here, for y'all's kind of ease of mind, RedChirp is consistently high 90s, so 98, 99% on deliverability. So it happens very few times, but it does happen every now and again. So I think that's accurate, Jenny.
Thank you. Okay, so we know who's involved and the path messages are taking. But now, before you can even send a message, there's an entire gating process in front of this called registration, where you have to register the brand that's sending the content and the type of content that you're going to be sending. So a little bit more about that. There are different types of registration that generally vary by the channel you're sending messages through. In this case, we're looking at different types of phone numbers. We are going to focus today mostly on 10DLC registration because the vast majority of RedChirpers are using 10DLC or local phone numbers to send their text messages. Some use toll-free. It's actually a pretty similar but different registration process. And then almost no RedChirpers use short codes. Short codes are available if you'd like to use them. They're like 5 or 6 digit phone numbers, but typically not appropriate for a winery because they don't have a sense of place associated with them. They're a lot more expensive. John, I don't even remember. How much are they?
It depends, but the generic verbiage around it is for what's called a random short code that doesn't have any ties to marketing or branding. It's $500 a month.
Yeah. So compared to like a local number's like 40.5 cents a month.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much more cost effective from a 10DLC or even toll-free number for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to focus on 10DLC registration. That is handled by an independent entity called the Campaign Registry, or most of us in the industry just refer to them as TCR. This entire process we're going to show you, it didn't exist even just a few years ago. And in just a few years, it has changed tremendously. So a little history about campaign registration. This first cropped up in fall, I think it was October-ish, 2021. At that point, it was just a suggestion, right, John?
Correct. Totally a suggestion, kind of if you want to be on the safe side, please go through with this. If not, your messages could be blocked, but we'll help you out from there.
Yeah. And by the way, just when this happened, RedChirp was already working with wineries. We just made the decision to jump on it. So I know a lot of the CSPs might have waited until it was required, but we just said right away, October, fall 2021, we're going to start using TCR and registering our traffic so we can get as much experience with it as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, then between 2021 and when it became an absolute requirement earlier this year, there were just increasing levels of strength of the recommendation. And the way that they helped to do that is that there were climbing surcharges. Like you don't have to register your content, but we're going to charge you more for those messages if they're not registered. And there was a higher risk of your messages being blocked. Again, all the way from back in fall 2021, RedChirp has been sending registered content. So we have kind of years of experience as this ramped up until earlier this year, where it just became an absolute requirement, right, John? If you are trying to send unregistered content, it just won't send, right?
Yeah, we are instructed by the carriers and by TCR at our level from a connectivity partner's perspective. We are instructed to block those messages ourselves. So it's kind of you'll send it, you'll be charged for it, but we have to block it. We're not allowed to push it through, or else we risk our relationships with the carriers and the aggregators.
Right. And even though this is now required, it's not static, right? All through this, and even since Q1 2025, the registration requirements have just kind of steadily becoming more complex over time.
Yes, and so some of y'all on the webinar might remember Jennie and her team, or Jennie's team, just in general, reaching out, saying, "Hey, we need this XYZ piece of paper," or I know we're going to talk about it later, but we need this privacy policy update, things of that nature. That's because the carriers are going to make a change when they see fit and try and clamp down further to try and get rid of bad actors.
Right. So in case we're ever worried that John and I will get bored, never happens. They just keep changing things. So a little bit of, never boring on this topic. So a little bit about registration. I don't want to scare people. We gather the information we need and RedChirp does the registration for you. And that process of registering then kicks off a second process of your registration being vetted by the major carriers, where they're going to look it all over and approve it or deny it. The end result, after you're approved for vetting, is that every one of you has a unique brand ID and a campaign ID that RedChirp automatically associates with every single text message that gets sent out from your organization's account. And that ID, those IDs, it's how the carriers, the aggregators, everybody in between is tracking things like your trust score and how many people are complaining that your messages are spam and trying to identify the bad actors along the way. That is the whole point of registration. Now, I am confident that no one here is going to be surprised, because you work in the wine industry, that there are extra regulations if you're texting about alcohol. Now, John, you work with other CSPs, not just RedChirp. Tell us a little bit about, in your perspective, is RedChirp unique in our focus on these highly regulated, especially BevAlc brands?
So to throw more alphabet soup into the mix, alcohol is considered part of Shaft C. It's obviously the A in Shaft, and that includes sex, hate, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and now cannabis. So these are areas where you are either not allowed to text entirely, or you have to go through, as Jennie has mentioned, some additional registration. From my perspective, I've worked with several hundred customers at the same time, and now a little bit less as I've refined. But from my perspective, the customer that I see, the folks that I see when they come in and say, hey, I have a problem with this message, I need this done, probably 99% of the time I have to go through, make sure they're doing everything correctly, make sure they're actually listening to the messages we're sending out and the communications we're sending out. With RedChirp, I've never had to deal with that. As I mentioned, RedChirp's deliverability stays at high 90s, 98, 99%. That's because RedChirp is extremely compliance minded, just like all of you probably are. You're in this industry, you know it's going to come with extra compliance policies and process. So RedChirp really takes it on the head. Jennie is always a pleasure to work with. It's always easy to go and fight on their behalf, and then through that on y'all's behalf, to make sure your messages get sent and make sure your business is supported. I think Jennie and her team really sometimes even bring news to me. They're really active about getting that information, seeing what's happening, seeing what's new, seeing what the carriers have done, and just bringing it either to my attention, sometimes to our attention at Bandwidth if we haven't been directly told by the carriers yet, which sometimes there's a delay there. But all that to say, and I'm rambling a smidge here, but all that to say is Jennie and her team are very good and very compliance minded. So there's never really an issue. When there is, it's popped up and handled pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a reflection of our wonderful customers that are also trying to follow the rules. So just the point being that we all know there are extra rules about texting about alcohol. It doesn't mean you can't do it. You know, some of the items in Shaft C are just flat out not allowed at all. But the alcohol, it is allowed. There is a way to do it correctly and compliantly. It just comes with some extra hurdles. That sometimes gets confusing to our customers who might have talked to other CSPs that are really generic. They don't specialize in a specific area. They just help all kinds of businesses. And a lot of those big generic platforms might have their own policy, no alcohol content allowed. That's not because you can't text about it. It's just because there's extra work required to do it that they don't want to take the time to specialize in. So just clearing that up, if you've kind of heard from other providers, it's not allowed, a little bit more details about how it is and a little extra regulation around it.
Correct.
Okay, we have to take a minute to talk about something that's just one of the worst parts of what John and I have to do in our lives. Knock on wood, we have gotten 100% of the winery brands that work with RedChirp successfully through registration and approval. But along the way, we do deal with lots of erroneous rejections in that process that we have to appeal. So RedChirp and Bandwidth end up doing a lot of education to the vetters themselves about those alcohol requirements and how we so carefully comply with them. And just a huge thanks to John, who often steps in when we need a little help to help us get those appeals through. So thank you, John, for all the times you've helped us with that.
Certainly. And I think it's important to mention, just so everybody understands, especially in today's world, you hear a ton about AI. and you hear a ton about just automating things in general. Most of this checking is still done by individual humans, right? So you're actually getting somebody who's physically reading. So sometimes that comes with it. Maybe somebody who's a little lazier and doesn't want to click a link and Command F and search it, right? So sometimes these erroneous rejections are literally just because one human saw something and the other human didn't see something because it goes to different people. So a lot of times it is really just that simple. Sometimes it's just because something didn't go through for some reason in the submission, because things sometimes get lost in translation and we just have to re-add it and redo it, and it's pretty quickly done. For the most part, these are handled pretty quickly.
Oh, and I do feel obligated to say that as much as this is a painful part of what John and I spend some of our time doing, the entire registration and vetting system is really good for businesses like you, because the purpose of it is to help identify bad actors and reduce spam so that the texting channel stays pure and effective as everyone's enjoying today. So I just feel compelled to say the intention is good. Sometimes the execution is a little frustrating, but this is all good. We do want this type of regulation to keep text messaging super effective.
Correct.
Okay, so I know that went way into the weeds. I'm going to go up a little bit now and pick out just a few things that affect you most directly to take away from this section about registration. The first one is that vetting process that we described, it takes time. So a couple years ago, you could say, I want to start texting and sign up with a CSP and start texting that day. And that cannot happen anymore because of this vetting process. So it is the beginning of October when this is airing. That means OND has started. It is when wineries sell most of their wine. If you're not texting yet and you want to text during this very busy, very effective OND time period, get started sooner rather than later, because it's going to take some time between deciding you want to get started and then being fully vetted and able to start texting. Second, this is kind of a common thing we come across in the wine industry, but not just in the wine industry. The TCR requires, and the carriers require, that every consumer-facing brand must register separately. I know that doesn't always match up with how our interconnected brands work in the real world, but it is a requirement, and you don't want to be on the wrong side of that. John, it's not just a wine industry problem, right?
No, it's not. And there's a good reason for this too. So I told Jenny, I do have some other customers in different areas. One person of mine specializes in apartment communications, maintenance, stuff like that. Apartments in the US are generally owned by 6 companies. So they were initially registering only 6 brands. They just were trying to get by with that. And then that kind of got squashed and said, no, each different apartment community, which would be each different wine brand, for lack of a better word, right, has to be on their own campaign and their own brand. It's tough on the front end. It can be difficult and time consuming to register each individual brand. And we understand that, which is why on our side, we're doing as much as we can to decrease the amount of time, increase our speed and decrease the amount of time vetting takes. But the good news there, folks, is that if you have a rejection, if somebody does get a rejection on a number when it's been texting and that number goes down, only one place is down rather than the whole network, right? So it gives you a bit more security and makes your messaging and makes your product more reliable for your customers. And that's, for Jenny's customers, for y'all, it makes the product more reliable.
Yeah. Way to find the silver lining, John. We appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah. And the other kind of thing to take away high level from this is the newest requirement in this registration process has been that the carriers now require specific things are present in your terms and conditions and your privacy policy. Now, we try to make this easy for you. So if you're getting set up on RedChirp, this is the section of your welcome screen where you give us all the information about registration. And you'll notice there's a section where you say, this is my privacy policy. And you can choose if you want to use our addendum or add the required items to your own. Same thing with terms and conditions. If for some reason you don't already have a privacy policy and terms and conditions on your website, we've got some resources in that section with templates that you can use as a starting place. There's all kinds of good reasons that you should have them, unrelated, but you are going to need it for registration no matter what. So we have some things to make that easy for you. If you choose to use our privacy policy and terms and conditions addendums, that's just kind of the easy button for you. This is an example of what it looks like. We host them. You don't have to put anything on your website. They include a link back to your full T&Cs or your full privacy policy for all the non-texting stuff. They're branded, so they match your brand. And just the point of them is we know that these vetters, who are not lawyers, by the way, right, John? They're just people. They're not lawyers, right? They're looking for a few specific things related to your privacy policy and text messaging. And we just take just those things and make them really easy and say, great, instead of having to look through a 14-page privacy policy document, this is just what is relevant to text messaging.
Yep.
So the whole purpose is just to give you an easy button on those. If you registered a long time ago, you've been chirping for a while, this wasn't a hurdle you had to go through, but it's still something you should clean up. We can help you do that because it will come at you at some point. You'll need help from a carrier, and maybe they won't want to help your ticket because there's a problem with your terms and conditions. So if you did this a while ago and you want to make sure that you're all in compliance with this, just reach out and our team can help you with that. Okay, so now you know more than you probably ever wanted to about who's involved in text messaging and this registration process. So John, now we're going to pivot and talk about some of the issues most likely to kind of pop up in the day-to-day usage of our wonderful customers.
Sure.
Probably the most common, I think that at least I get on my desk, is when a message is not delivered because someone, an aggregator or a receiving carrier, thinks incorrectly, right? This message is spam.
Yep.
It doesn't happen all the time, but one of the most common ones.
Yeah, and sorry, it's probably the most common error, or the common complaint that I get from my book of business is we're getting erroneous spam rejections here. So I understand the pain.
Yes. This is because, right, it's done by algorithm, and these algorithms are imperfect. Sometimes they get it wrong, right? John, tell us a little bit about like some common causes for this.
So the most common cause here, folks, is even though you've registered, even though you've vetted, that doesn't mean you can send whatever content you want to send, right? So the carriers and the aggregators are still going to monitor for keywords. And a lot of times, some of those keywords still trip sometimes they still trip faults in the system, and their system kind of automatically tags things and labels it. As Jennie has mentioned, this is just termed as an erroneous spam rejection. This is an approved message. So we go through an appeals process that just looks like, hey guys, this is an approved message. Everything on here is legit. They have every up-to-date standard. We're good to go here. And that spam label gets turned off and the messages start flowing again.
Yeah. And just to clarify, if you're a RedChirper listening and you hear John talking about keywords, he's not talking about the RedChirp concept of keywords like ship 6. It's just some word that the algorithms are paying careful attention to right now because they've noticed it commonly used in spam messages.
Correct. And those are words that is proprietary to each carrier. They're mostly the same, but think about a lot of them are common sense, right? They don't like curse words on a business to consumer message, which is what these are, right? Sometimes they don't like general shaft content, but the algorithm won't be able to check that this is a registered message with a verified, vetted campaign. So it pings it, and then we do the work to appeal that suspension, essentially.
Yeah. Great. So sometimes the carriers tell us when this happens, hey, I think this is spam, I'm not delivering it. And in those cases, we will display it for you. So right under the message, there'll be a red error message that says, hey, this wasn't delivered. It was rejected as spam. But I do want to point out that sometimes on purpose, the carriers don't give us that error. And just imagine you're the carriers trying to thwart bad actors. You don't want to immediately tell the bad actor, you've tripped my algorithm. So that's why it's sometimes purposely silent. if this happens to you, reach out to the team at RedChirp. You all have the RedChirp customer service team as a number that you can text, saved in RedChirp always. You can reach us at help@redchirp.com. You can use at redchirp.com our web chat to say, I need help with something. And then we can open a ticket to get some help. And if our ticket doesn't get resolved in a timely and satisfactory way, that's when I reach out to poor John and say, John, I need help with this. Wonderful. And something kind of new is we have built some new error rate detection into RedChirp. So let's say you're sending a bulk message. RedChirp is now monitoring to see if an error rate goes above a threshold. Right now it's 40%, but we kind of monitor and change it over time once a certain minimum amount of messages are sent. And then if that happens, we automatically stop the bulk message. So you're not sending thousands of messages that are, for example, erroneously being rejected. And then we proactively notify whoever sent the message and also our team so we can jump in and help. All right, another common issue has to do with including links in your messages, which you absolutely can and should have links in a lot of messages. It's often appropriate. But it's important to know that in a regular SMS or MMS, you can't hyperlink text like click here. You have to put the full URL, including the HTTPS. Those I know can get long, which is why people are tempted to shorten them. But please do not use commercial link shorteners like bit.ly or tinyURL. Your messages are absolutely going to be blocked if you do that. Now, there is a way that RedChirp can shorten the links for you. But even when we're doing everything the way we're supposed to, we have noticed over the last few months, poor John has had several conversations with us about this, that for some reason AT&T seems to be erroneously blocking messages with shortened links, even when shortened the correct way. So because of that, RedChirp is now automatically shortening the links unless we see that that's going to a known AT&T number. We did send an email. I know you get so much communication, you might not have noticed it. This all happens automatically without you having to do anything. And it can and probably will change over time as we notice different things changing.
For sure.
Also, we've kind of been steadily trying to do more to help you keep links from being a problem for you. So, first we just started by educating our customers about link shorteners. Then we added a way to shorten them for you. Then we added a warning. And now we'll actually detect if you put in a commercially shortened link in your bulk message, and we're tracking over 1,400 different commercial link shorteners, you'll get this big warning, and you cannot continue unless you type, this could be marked as spam. So I don't know about you, John, I think we've done what we can do. And if you still include a commercially shortened link, I don't know how to help you.
I honestly only thought there was 5 commercial shortened, and so kudos.
Awesome. Okay, and the last hot button issue we want to talk about are some slowdowns. So, John, tell us a little bit. I think a lot of our customers don't know off the top of their head, why would they, that your text messaging is rate limited, right?
Yes. So everybody has an amount of, and pardon the pun, but amount of bandwidth that people can send, right? Bandwidth itself has an amount at which we then have to divvy out between all of our customers. A lot of what carriers see is that when somebody is blasting out a ton of messages, 10s and 20 per second, things of that nature, it's really spammy and fraudulent type of traffic. So the carriers like to see messages that are very consistent and going out at a normal rate of time. That's generally about 1 second. A lot of ways you can think about a lot of what the rules of carriers are doing is they're trying to mimic as much person-to-person behavior, like when Jennie and I text back and forth about a problem. Jennie can only send so many texts per second. It's typically about 1, right? So that's kind of what the carriers are trying to do with this behavior here.
Yeah, great explanation. Thank you. So John mentioned that 1 per second. That's typically what we see under the best of circumstances, but timely to us now Black Friday, Cyber Monday is coming up, and those 2 days and really like the whole week around it, that's not the best of circumstances, folks. The carriers are super busy. So just like to warn people nice and early, expect traffic to be slower around that time and get prepared. And the poor John also is kind of on speed dial to help us when we see anything and adjust kind of rates and throughput for us.
Poor me, poor support. They have to work through those days, right? So since we're a carrier, we're up 24/7. So we're doing the best we can to try and allocate extra rate limits for people like Jennie who are proactive and asking for it, which they do every year. So that's just to support everything we can and to help Jennie support everything she can for y'all.
So a couple practical ideas as you start planning for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Consider sending some of your messages not exactly on Black Friday and Cyber Monday, but maybe a little bit before that. If you have a big recipient list to get through, start early enough in the day so that you have a few hours to do that. And then also, this wasn't available last Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but now you have access to RedChirp's AI Recipient Optimization, which can help you actually make your recipient list smaller, but smarter. Try to focus in on the people most likely to buy. So just a quick few minutes on how that works. So if you want to take advantage of that around Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or anytime, you add your recipients that you think you want to send to. And then RedChirp can predict on a scale of 0 to 100 how likely we think each recipient is to like and take action from that message. So here's an example, and you can see for Marivel here, RedChirp has guessed 74 out of 100 for how much we think Marivel will like the message, and we're really confident 99 out of 100 in that score. Now, you never have to look at these scores, but you can. We don't hide this information, and you can even drill down to see how we came to that score for that particular person. So you can see how the AI model that we built and trained using millions of real data points evaluated the score for Marivel. So Marivel, she last purchased non-wine club wine from you 48 days ago. And that's where that puts her on the curve of how we see from all those data points, that's related to how likely is she is to buy from this message. It's been a while since you sent Marivel a promotional text message. It's been 70-something days. She's on a really good part of that curve. And she has purchased from promotional text campaigns that you have sent to her in the past. She's actually in the 14th percentile for how much. And the fourth layer that the AI model is looking at is Marivel is an active club member right now. So those data points is how the AI model came to that score. Again, you probably will never spend time diving into individual people, but what's more useful is what you can do with this data. So in RedChirp, there's really two actions you can take with that. Choose the right moment is all about risk reduction. It will remove recipients when the timing's awkward for them. Maybe they just bought wine yesterday. Or you can choose a specific number of recipients. Now that I think will be really useful for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. You can whittle your list down to a smaller number, and you pick the specific number of recipients, and RedChirp will populate that list. 75% of them are going to be high sentiment, high competence recipients. Those are your home runs. And 25% of that list are folks we know less about. This is a really important addition. This technique is called salting, and it's super important, or you'll never text with your new customers and learn more about them. So sorry for that little soapbox, but as you prepare for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, this is a great tool to help you have a smaller but more targeted recipient list. And my last note of advice as we come up to the busiest season here is if we ever become aware of a slowdown or an issue anywhere in that entire path your messages take, we'll post that right at the top of RedChirp. And there'll be a link to see more details about it. When you click on the details link, it'll drop down and show you information. This is a real incident that happened, sometime in the past. And we'll tell you everything we know about it, and we'll keep that updated. So, public service announcement from me to you. Make sure to read these details. I can't tell you how many people reach out to me to say, what's going on? I see this incident in RedChirp. And I do love talking to you. But if you want a faster answer, you can just click to read more about it. Okay. History and operations lessons are over. Now we get to talk about the exciting stuff. John, just for context, how exciting is this coming of RCS compared to other changes you've seen in the last decade?
Well, RCS has technically been around. I think you're going to show that I'm stealing your slide material here, but it's been around for several years. Apple just never rode the train. Apple's finally riding the train, and Apple, as a lot of you probably who might use an iPhone, when you text somebody, see RCS enabled on your text messages now. So once Apple did it, everybody decided to follow suit further. For us in the messaging and voice industry, this is incredibly impactful. There's a lot of really, really cool stuff. I don't want to steal more of Jennie's slides, so we'll talk about it as we move on.
Yeah, very exciting. Okay, RCS. That another acronym to know. It stands for Rich Communication Services. It's a new type of text message, right? Today you can send SMS. Today you can send MMS. And in the future, you will be able to send a third type of message called RCS. And as John kind of mentioned, it's been coming for a long time. Actually, work on RCS started way back in 2007. In 2016, Google went all in on it and integrated RCS messaging into all of their Android messaging apps. And then, as John mentioned, Apple finally integrated it into their messaging with iOS 18 just last year, and that really got the ball rolling. Now, RCS is going to be deliverable to most, but not all, consumers, which is why it is now getting folded into business messaging. So in 2025, Verizon started to support RCS messaging in A2P, which is basically business text messaging. AT&T and T-Mobile have jumped on board now. And so this is all ending with the very soon, hopefully coming of RCS to more businesses than just a few. Tell us, John, like there are some businesses using RCS now, but who's it limited to?
Certainly. So, and add in just for fun, 2018, when I first started at Bandwidth, it was RCS is pie in the sky. It's never going to happen. 6 years later, Apple finally made it happen. So right now, the carriers don't fully understand the impact this will have. So they're trying to slow roll this out. And because they are controlling it, we have to follow suit, right? So right now, generally speaking, you're looking at Fortune 100 companies or other folks who are going to be standard household names, right? And at the beginning, they are really trying to limit this channel, not all channels, but this channel to specific content that is basically to try and help proof this out for them so they understand what to expect, how to charge for it even. We saw numbers back in May, and those numbers have changed 6 times in terms of pricing for this. So the carriers are still a little confused about how to implement this, but they're going ahead and letting some folks get in on the action and start the start the marketplace adoption and the community adoption, the end user adoption, like all of us on the call, for how people will interact and then take these messages.
Yeah, so it's just a few really, really big brands that they're allowing to experiment with it now, right?
Home Depot, Delta Airlines, people like that, right? So exactly.
Great. All right, so let me show you what some of these look like. So first, I'm going to show you some real world examples. So this is an RCS that I received from Verizon. By the way, not surprising that the carriers themselves are some of the first that get to play with this, right?
Of course.
So this is the experience when it first comes in, right? I'm in my messaging app. I've got all kinds of text messages, but you see the one at the top is from Verizon. And I have never saved Verizon in my phone, but it shows up with the Verizon logo and branding. This is very exciting, right? I was listening to a webinar with a different carrier a few weeks ago. They had someone from Google on there talking about RCS, and they were talking about how not that long ago, the most valuable real estate on a phone was the home screen where you could get an app. But with RCS, that is most likely shifting to the most valuable real estate being showing up in people's messaging screen.
For sure.
Very excited. Now, once you click on that message, this is what the actual conversation looked like. You had branding at the top, you had this image, text, and then something to click on that takes you to a URL, but notice it's a button. It wasn't a whole URL to click on. And if you actually clicked on Verizon at the top, where normally you would see like the phone number that was sent from, instead, you see information about this business that's sending you the message. One of the key things about RCS messaging is that this is not coming from a phone number, right? It's coming from a business.
Correct.
Now, this is a big change, right? That these messages are not coming from a phone number, they're coming from a business. This is another example. FedEx is someone that's getting to play with this. This is another example when you click on the sender and all the information that you can see and the branding about the business that's sending this to you. And here are a few more hypothetical examples from Bandwidth. So these are not real messages, but on the left, you can see an example of maybe a marketing text that's going over SMS today. And then on the right, you can see it reimagined as how that might look with RCS. What are some of the things in that you find exciting, John?
For me, especially since I am dealing with vetting and registration just as much as y'all are, right? A lot of what we love to talk about when we're talking to customers about future of RCS is the verified sender. You see the check mark, just like you would see on like a Twitter or an Instagram for somebody who's real, right? And not someone's bot account or something of that nature. So that is really powerful. That's a really, really powerful tool. So companies can think of a lot of the spam texts we get right now being about your toll being outdated. You have to pay a fee or you'll lose your license, right? DMVs are probably going to want to step up for this, and state transportation agencies are probably going to step up for this and say, we want our logo. We want you to understand when you're getting a text from us. I think for different industries, the excitement is different, right? I think especially, Jennie, for y'all, the big thing here is going to be not having to worry about those links anymore. Getting these buttons, getting these really easy to use, approved ways to send the link you want to send and not have to worry about message count, concatenation, all those fun words that we get to talk about when a message gets sent wrong way and out of order. But really powerful ways to say, hey, listen, I have a delivery coming of a box of wine. I'm not going to be at home. Let me click this button and it'll automatically bring up a schedule and I can schedule my delivery with FedEx and be home for my wine. So it's not sitting on the porch in 95-degree weather for 5 hours.
Yeah. John, they're not even allowed to leave it. So it's super critical, right?
Anyway, correct.
Yeah.
So that's probably what's most exciting, I would say, for RedChirpers is the interoperability, that action, the very easy call to actions on buttons, being able to use that and not having to worry about links and really maybe making your link shortener tracking outdated.
Yeah, exactly. So now that you've seen a few examples, let's kind of go over the key features about like what's different with RCS. So we talked about this a little bit already, right? But the fact that these don't come from a phone number and instead they come from a verified business, the whole purpose of that is to take messaging to this new level of trust, like John mentioned, right? Along with that, there is for sure going to be a more strict registration and vetting process than we're already going through for 10DLC to get approved to send RCS. That all goes hand in hand.
For sure.
Yes. And then as you saw in some of those examples, other exciting features that it's going to be able to support more rich media. So higher resolution images, videos, things like image carousels that have not been possible in MMS are going to be possible inside of RCS. So I think for wine industry businesses where they're often very high end and you put a lot into your branding, there's going to be some wonderful opportunities for more visual impact in your messages. Also, we've been told that RCS is going to give us access to more analytics than we get today from 10DLC, SMS, and MMS. Specifically, I'm excited about read receipts. Like, right, John, we get a delivery receipt that the carrier has received the message. But even after that, remember on our path, there's one step between the carrier got it and it gets to the consumer handset. Something could happen there. So a read receipt will give us better insight, right?
Right, for sure. Read receipt will be to the handset, just like you have if you have them turned on, so people understand when you've read a message and ignored them. But I think that's going to be pretty powerful too. So you understand, okay, this is being read, and then you can track analytics. Likely, you can track analytics about, hey, has it been read? Has it been interacted with? Have they clicked my image carousel? Have they clicked the button here? And are they behaving in a way in a buying mood? Those sorts of things will be more accessible.
Excellent. And then we already went on about this, but we're very excited about the buttons. So instead of big links, you can have buttons like buy now, confirm reservation, redirect my package, things that I think will be very helpful in the wine industry.
For sure.
We talked about a lot about what we know about RCS. Let's talk a little bit about what we don't know. One thing we don't know is when it's going to be available for brands like yours, right? John already talked about it's only available today to some of the most recognizable brands in the world, and it has not been opened up for all brands to do that. We don't know exactly what the registration and vetting process is going to be like. So how long it's going to take, what's going to be required, and we also don't know how much that is going to cost ultimately when they open this up.
Right, and I'll interject there real quick, Jenny. Yeah. Right now, what we do know about the vetting and registration process is it's entirely manual. Where RedChirp's been able to go in for 10DLC and automate a lot of these things for you and grab a lot of it and submit it, and it's getting reviewed. This is a far more manual process, so naturally it's going to take more time, especially up front. Eventually, I imagine it'll speed up, but up front, slow.
Yeah. And hopefully it doesn't change in the few days between recording and broadcasting. I do believe it's going to be handled through TCR. We now know that. We have reached out to TCR. They were looking for, who wants to beta test some things. And we are waiting on some new things we have to sign with our contract with them, which has been delayed several weeks. So when I say emerging right now, I really mean it. It's almost here, but it's not quite here yet. Another important thing we don't know is exactly how much these messages are going to cost. I know poor John probably gets asked that all the time. And as he mentioned, they've seen numbers and they keep changing. So, John, correct me if I'm wrong. We're confident they're going to cost more than MMS.
Yes, this will be definitely a more premium feature. And as you see, it's a more premium look and feel too, right? It's more bespoke, to use a fancy word for it. But it's definitely going to be, since it's more premium, more costly.
Yeah, great. But stay tuned. Because of that, I also think we don't know until we start experimenting with it. What are going to be the best use cases for RCS for wineries? I think it's unlikely you're going to want to send all your messages by RCS. There's going to be some that work just fine by SMS, and that's a lot cheaper. So as we get experience, we'll be able to learn more about what the best use cases are for those. Right now, we do a lot of our routing by phone number. So if you're a larger winery, you might have a reservations team number and a membership team number and a promotions team number. But my understanding is it's not totally worked out yet how that's going to go through RCS. Is that right, John? Something about tenants or something.
So the word is agents, right? So every brand will register for an agent. It'll be one agent, right? So that Verizon agent or that FedEx agent Jenny has showed here on the presentation, that's the one agent these folks have. Nobody could change, but nobody should have more than one agent. So that kind of back end routing that Jenny's talking about, which is on her platform and on y'all's, in in your day-to-day business that's going to possibly change and have to be updated. But that's why it's exciting.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to venture into pure conjecture here, John. I could be completely wrong. I'm just guessing. But I have a feeling, and I'm curious if you feel the same way, that because of all the additional regulations that exist around alcohol content, wineries are probably not going to be at the front of the line when it comes to kind of expanding who can register for RCS.
I'd say you're correct. If I'm going to gesticulate and have some conjecture, I believe you're right. I specifically think if we're talking about best use cases, they're going to be ones that are more, we'll just call it shaft adjacent, right? Where you're kind of what we talked about beforehand, delivery and shipping notifications, things of that nature. We're not promoting the use of things of that nature that you have to worry about in your day-to-day business anyway, right? So that would be my best guess, if I'm going to guess as well, that's where it would start. And then eventually the leash would be loosened over time.
Okay. One more thing I'm going to ask of you, John, here.
Sure.
One thing I worry about is our customers feeling like they've fallen behind because they're not sending RCS yet. So I'm just curious, like, what would you say if you were talking to one of our customers that feels that way?
For me, it's just, listen, the carriers have put out the stipulation, right? They're not even opening it up for us past major brands that we support. And that's, and we're going to have more sway in those conversations just because of our size and who we are, right? So they're not allowing anybody. So it's a little bit of be patient, bide your time. I know that's the worst thing when something is exciting and fun. It's like a kid at Christmas who wants to open their presents way before Christmas Day. And that's truly what this is, right? This is the first substantial change in messaging that has been fun. So it's the first fun change in a long time. So people are excited for it. We're excited for it. But until the carriers say, hey, we understand more about this, nobody should be doing it. And you might see people advertise it. And I've seen competitors advertise it against me. But what I'm able to tell people is I look at fine print or, ask directly, do you have it now or are you promising a future state? So if you're promising a future state, great. That's all well and good, but it doesn't matter now, right? So nobody should be jumping the line. I think the carriers are pretty strong on this. And that's what we've been told, even as the carriers are looking to maybe soon start increasing who can register.
Great. So RCS, very exciting. Can't send them yet. Let's go over some ways to get ready. John and we came up with 3 ideas. How do you get ready since you can't start right now? And the very best thing that you can do is grow your opt-in list. So every single business out there should be gathering as much high quality express written consent to text as you can. Growing your opt-in list, it can help you reduce risk. It can help with future-proofing your texting program because, as you've seen, regulations continue to evolve and change. And it's also great business sense, right? If you don't have your consumers' phone numbers, you can't text them in the first place. It's absolutely a waste of time and money to text people who don't enthusiastically want to get those texts from you. We know from the data that when people opt in to receive your text messages, they buy more from you. And you also get better deliverability because setting aside legal risk, the carriers want you to have express written consent too. And that is just going to help reduce opt-outs and increase deliverability. Lots of ways that you can do this. Some of my favorites, the RedChirp web chat feature. It's included in every plan, and it's an amazing customer service tool. It's a surprise revenue generator, but it's also a great way to organically and consistently gather express written consent. You can and should make your own custom opt-in forms in RedChirp, and you can feature those in email campaigns, on social media, at events. You can even invite people to opt in to get your texts by texting in a fun word like Cheers 25. We take care of the age gating, the special alcohol requirements. You can even set up a QR code, by the way, that automatically opens a text message to a specific number with the keyword ready to go. So all they have to do is scan it and then hit send. Most wineries have some kind of pop-up on their website asking people to sign up for your email list. But even better, replace this with one that collects both email and text messaging consent. And if you haven't seen it yet, RedChirp's new light boxes, they're out of beta testing. They do this, so you can and you should set this up today. Great initial results. Beta testers of our Lightbox feature saw 160% more opt-ins during the first 30 days, and every single one of us could stand to be more like the wonderful Adam Krasinski with Lawrence Wine Estates, who helped us beta test this and had great success. And a little sneak peek, something we're working on right now, very excited about. I talk to wineries every day who tell me, Jennie, we have 3 to 4 people in most of our tastings, but we usually only get contact information for the one person who made the reservation. And when it comes to consent, they're probably not getting anything from that. So we are working on this new guest check-in feature that you can fold into the process of welcoming guests into your tastings, pouring them their first sips, and have them check in, either using an iPad or a QR code. You are serving alcohol, so it makes total sense to ask people to check in and gather their birth date this way. And we really think that this could help wineries exponentially increase how much contact information and consent they're gathering at these in-person tastings. So this is going to be ready to start beta testing within the next few weeks. We're very excited about that.
Thanks.
All right. Of course, besides growing your opt-in list, engage in doing a lot of high quality, trusted texting with the methods you already have. And watch for new announcements from RedChirp. John's keeping us informed. We'll keep you informed about the rolling out of RCS. If you are not already chirping, it's OND, people. You got to get on board fast. The QR code to get in line will just get the information we need to get you started. And if instead you've got some questions, you can use the other QR code to book a very specific demo, or we'll talk to you about your specific needs and show you how RedChirp works. John, thank you so much for spending all this time joining me today, getting ready for this webinar, and for taking such good care of our RedChirp account.
More than happy to. It's always fun to chat with you, as I mentioned all the time. But it's been a pleasure working with you, especially the last 4 years, but especially on this project too. It's been fun.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for coming today. Keep learning about what's working today and what's coming in the future. Keep communicating with your customers who love you and love the wine you make. And if you do those 2 things, you'll keep selling, even when times get a little challenging. Thank you, everyone.